So a little look back on the week. I think the big bill that passed off the Senate floor was Senate File 42, Senate File 1, also known as House File 1, which is the permitting and regulation bill. Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen passed that yesterday. Good floor debate, a few amendments accepted, a few amendments rejected, a lot of lawyers having conversation, which is always interesting, and but the bill passed. If you followed it at all, it was a lot of lawyers talking. The other thing, of course, this week on Monday was the regent selection, and thought that went very well. We ended up with some what we hope will be very helpful, successful regents. Looking ahead, and let's see, looking ahead, I feel a few things. We are very likely going to have a vote next week on the governor's tax proposal. It has not been jacketed yet. It has not been authored yet, but we will, if we have to, put together the proposal, and we would like to get a vote up or down on the Senate floor and potentially, I would guess, the House floor. The other thing is we are looking next week to have some closure on the alternative teacher pathways. Feels like we've been talking about that for a couple weeks. We've been really trying to accommodate the governor's office on that. That is frankly what it's been. There's been, I think they had about 12 original changes they would have liked to seen. We went back and forth on at least up to 10 of those. There's still a few other changes that they'd like, so we're offering some language, and we'd very much like to see that finalized, and hoping to get a signature on that. So once again, we'd like to see that next week. Potentially some confirmations. We're looking at the appointment calendar and figuring that out. So, and then of course on Monday is the big rollout on the budget forecast. So we'll all be tuned in on that. We'll be receiving a briefing in the morning, and then the information will be released. So.
Well, and let me just follow up on one of Majority Leader Koch's points. So what we've been trying to communicate to the governor is that there's been a window that is starting to close now for some of these policy discussions. So we've kind of lumped 3 bills together here that are almost to his desk, that we think are ready for signature. So it's the education reform piece, it's the permitting bill, the regulatory relief package, and it's the nuclear power issue. So these have all been, they've all enjoyed bipartisan support. We have, in some cases, slowed things down to make sure that we could have constructive discussions. The governor has been involved personally in each of those 3 issues. His agencies have been involved directly, his staff has been involved directly, but the window with the budget forecast coming out on Monday and our committees getting to work on budgets, our ability to do much more on those policy issues is going to shorten up and close. So we've tried to really kick things into high speed on those 3 issues. So I would really like to see closure on those 3 issues next week, and then again allow us to focus very specifically and almost without any other distractions solely on the budget.
Just
Senator, you said that the governor's tax proposal debated on the floor of the Senate next week?
very likely.
Do you like the chances of that passing, pretty much?
I'm skeptical of the chances of that passing. In fact, I won't call the vote here now, but I think you're going to have bipartisan opposition to the governor's tax proposal on the floor.
Why bother going through what's a foreground?
Well, you know, and I think that's an interesting question, Bill. At this point, the governor's budget proposal is a document. It's just a document. There's been no bill proposed. I'm not sure if the governor is working the floor for votes. I'm not sure what his action on his budget proposal has been. So we feel that it's important we've been hearing portions of that. We've had, I think, several days of discussion in the tax committee on his tax proposal, coming from the agencies, not from a bill, because again, the DFL are not authoring it. They're not offering the bill in any kind of way. We've been having the budget discussion in our finance committees. So I mean, I think it's important for people of Minnesota to understand his proposal, and it's important for the people of Minnesota, as represented by senators and representatives on the floor, to have a say, one way or the other, on that proposal.
On that question, when the Pawlenty budget was brought up on the Senate floor last time around, it failed. Did either of you vote for it?
I did.
You both did?
We both did.
Okay.
What was the thinking behind the letter, Senator, to the governor's office? What was the strategy behind that?
Well, I think, I don't think the letter said anything that Geoff and I haven't been saying for at least 2 months here, as long as we've been standing in front of the mics. But I think that given the governor's budget proposal and the depth and the breadth to what he had in there, I believe it was 8-to-1 tax increases to spending reductions. We wanted to make it very clear. We've been having, again, the discussions on the budget in committees. We've been having the discussion on that budget in our caucus, and we felt very strongly about, just sending, once again, should there be, that we wanted to express to the governor that tax increases are not on the table for the Senate Republicans.
Do you guys view tax expenditures as tax increases, or if you close those out, or is it just, spending? Because two of your members have been saying, tax expenditures are state spending. They're not tax increases if we close those out.
Sure.
So where do you guys stand on that?
I think we have to have discussion on that, and I'm very open to discussion on tax reform. I think we have a very thoughtful tax chair that wants to talk about tax reform. I would say that, are we going to get wholesale tax reform this session, given the time frame and the budget work that we have to do? It's probably not, Tom. But that's a great discussion to have, and we're very open to having it. What we're not open to raising taxes to solve this budget dilemma. We are focused on the spending side of the equation. We believe that there needs to be reform, priorities, and reductions in spending.
Well, and just one follow-up, that we've got 87 days. I mean, it's actually amazing to think how fast things are moving. We have 87 days until May 23rd. So we got some heavy lifting to do here. We got 16 committees and 16 committee chairs working hard on that. So through our communications, through putting the governor's budget and taxes up for a vote, hopefully we'll start to get some clarity about where we're going to go on the budget. That's the most important thing we have to do. So we have the most aggressive committee deadlines ever, and we are really pushing our finance folks. So it's going to be fun.
What's your prediction on the forecast?
Signs are saying that it's going to be better, and if you talk to business people out there, they're saying, for the most part, save for the construction people, that things seem to have ticked up. So, you stay hopeful, but I don't have an over and under for you.
They have a pool over in the house.
Do they?
What's the range?
What's
the range?
250 to 750.
2 to 6?
256 to 612?
Yeah.
No pool over here.
Pretty specific.
You guys are so serious.
Well,
My favorite Bill Frenzel quote is that the first member of every new cabinet, the first member of every new legislative staff is Rosie Scenario. So we're all hoping.
On that?
Ms. Scenario.
One other thing on the tax breaks, will you clarify again, is eliminating a tax break a tax hike?
Sounds like
Yeah. It seems to me.
How are we going to deal with fee increases? Will we be seeing any fee increases this session?
My understanding is the governor's budget, which again, we have a press release, we have some budget documents, but not a bill. But so far, the first analysis that I saw has the governor's budget clocking in at about $60 million in fee increases. So our chairs and committees will dig into that, but it's kind of hard to dig into without legislative language in front of us. So we're politely pushing the administration to put pen to paper on that.
Sorry, is the Senate open to fee increases?
I think there's always that concern, and is there, are they user fees? How are they applied? We heard a little bit about his Public Utilities Commission potential fee. They're looking for some staff. I just think it, as part of, we're going to have those discussions, Rachel, but it's just a little difficult because it is truly on a committee by committee basis. And
what about gambling to deal with the deficit? Where are you on that?
right now, we're focused on the spending side.
Have you ruled it out? Have you ruled out gambling revenue?
Well, I think if you even looked back last year, Bill, there's been varied support, and I think that it's not, I don't even think that that's necessarily a partisan issue, but our focus for this budget, our budget will be focused on the spending side, the reform and the priority side.
Can you tell us a little more then about where you think you might be going on the spending side? I'm not asking you to release your budget today, but can you give us a sort of a sense of the kinds of things Minnesotans should be thinking about as they think about what reduced spending means?
Well, it's all about, we're really focused on what's going to make Minnesota more competitive. Keep it as competitive as it's been, but actually make it more competitive. And if you look, across the states, as we keep seeing, there's various budgets that are coming out that we want to make certain that Minnesota doesn't become an outlier. You're going to see some reforms in our proposals. Again, with 87 days, wholesale reform will be difficult, but we are very focused on what can be done better and more cost effectively. So I think reform is going to be a big piece of it. So it's going to be that jobs focus, competitiveness, reform, and then obviously dealing with certain reductions.
Well, and Laura, we have some difference in terminology. What's a cut? What's an increase? And so I feel like a very strong fundamental of the Senate Republican budget is, again, we will know a revenue number on Monday, okay? So our challenge is to put together a $32 or $33 billion budget that keeps Minnesota competitive, that gets our economy moving again, that doesn't put us out of line with other states and even other countries. So I think that's kind of the fundamental framework that we start on Monday, and then we'll be down to like 84 days.
Chairwoman Holbrook says that the House is going to be releasing their targets the second week in March. Are you guys coordinating that with them?
We are coordinating targets with the House.
Senator Koch, you said that you're open to discussions on tax reform, but then you both said you're not open to raising taxes, and you said that eliminating tax expenditures would be a tax increase. So are you saying that you're not open to eliminating any tax expenditures?
I think what I'm saying is, we'd like to have the discussion on reform. What we're finding is within the 87 days and given our tight budget targets, that's discussion that we're going to have to continue to have.
And there was zero tax reform in the governor's budget, at least what we can tell of the governor's budget. There was zero reform. And the largest tax increase that we can find, the largest tax increase in history, that's not reform. Matter of fact, we fear that puts us so out of line. So, we should have tax committees that look at everything and know this tax code backwards and forwards. That's their job. That's their job. But fundamentally, as a caucus, we got to put together a $32/$33 billion budget and do it with a 21st century outlook on economy and jobs.
Did your letter to the governor say that you're not willing to compromise at all, as Senator Bach contended in his letter?
No, within the $32 billion, we're absolutely willing to compromise, and we would look for reforms, and we would look to the governor to give us his priorities. So that's not accurate at all. We're absolutely open to compromise. But the point is that a $1.5 billion, 5% increase is something that businesses and families would be very happy to have. And within that, we're very happy to have discussion.
Senator Michel, you just took a little whack at the governor for not having tax reform. Is your budget going to have serious tax reform in it?
It's early. I hope so.
And how do you define reform? Because he would say that making the state more progressive is a reform. Obviously, you disagree.
Well, we're one of the top 10 progressive states
Already.
That's not the question. How would you define reform, and what should we expect to see from you?
We're not going to be able to construct a new tax code at our Friday morning briefings, and that's why we have a tax committee. And so we'll start with what the governor's given us, but we were surprised and a little taken aback. And I don't think he would confess that it had some kind of tax reform in it. It had tax increases, 8-1. So
but you've both said that you won't have time for serious tax reform this session.
I think that's a big bite. I think that's,
So will your budget include reform this session?
Well, we've talked about there's the tax reform discussion, and then there's also just government reform. I mean, we have an entire committee that's dedicated to trying to figure out, this is Senator Perry's committee, how do we deliver government services in the 21st century? Are we doing it well, or do we kind of have some 1950s, 1970s models here? So that maybe that's not the reform you want us talking about, but that I would expect to be in a legislative budget to come forward.
But so
over
then
the
is
next
it
couple
fair
of
to
years.
take a little whack at the governor for not having tax reform when you're not saying your budget will have tax reform?
I'll let you be the judge of that, Rach. The governor, we're getting along great with the governor. I hope he has 3 bills that he can sign next week. I have a feeling he's not ready to sign our budget, but we got time.
Does this mean that things such as an expansion of sales tax, which was talked about last year, and certainly in the campaigns this year, all of those things, do you think are off the table as possible areas of a negotiated settlement at the end of this session?
Any tax increases would not be on the table as far as we're concerned.
Senator Koch, on another subject, there are a number of bills on the runway in the Senate and the House that are similar to the union-related bills in Wisconsin. Are you going to allow those bills to be heard, including abolishing pensions, restricting union collective bargaining rights and right to work?
And abolish pension.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm not aware of the abolished pension bill.
In the House.
Well, so don't I can't be, I'm already responsible for the Senate. You don't hold me accountable for the House.
That?
Well, and I think what we talked about last week, Pat, is are public employees going to be a part of the solution? Yes, they will have to be. And we would hope that they would come to the table and be helpful in our discussions. I think there are some bills that we looked at that MAPE introduced even in the last biennium that had to do with kind of deputy commissioners, middle management, some efficiencies. We're going to take all of that into account because I think that it would be far more helpful to have public employees at the table assisting, knowing that what we're looking at is part of all Minnesota's to have Minnesota competitive, to solve this budget, balance this budget, is in the best interest of every Minnesotan.
Would you favor removing collective bargaining rights from unions, public unions? Would you favor that?
Yeah, I just don't think that at this point, Pat, that's something that we are going to have that we're going to discuss today. I'm kind of interested to see if that bill moves through the committee process.
Well, it's an interesting answer. I'm wondering if you favor it.
If I personally favor it. Yeah, I guess I'd have to think about it. I'm kind of watching what's happening in Wisconsin. I think that that's a bit of a different approach. I think that they have some different issues. So,
we're not Wisconsin.
Right.
We have divided government here. So, at some point, as our committees get to work on things, and I don't think they've taken up some of these measures, we have to make kind of traffic management decisions within the Senate, within the legislative body. What are we going to push forward? And what we keep saying, to the point of boredom for you all, is we're working on the budget. We're working on the budget. Are there public employee compensation budget issues within our discussions on the budget? Sure. I mean, we will look at pensions and wages and health care. That's definitely going to be a couple of our committees are going to have to look at.
Traffic management, you're holding up a stop sign on right to work.
Yeah, I don't think at this point that we're holding up stop signs, that we're going to continue discussion on all aspects, but the focus has got to be on the budget, and so to the extent that a bill is not helpful with the $32 billion mark that we're looking to hit.
Senator Koch is a much more positive traffic manager.
That's right.
She doesn't need stop signs.
Ruling out many of the things that are happening in Wisconsin.
Well, again, I'm not sure how they apply to Minnesota, Pat, and so, I don't know where the committee's going to be working. We're telling them that as of on Monday, the focus for these committees has got to be on finance. They've got to sit down and get these budgets rolling. So we're going to be meeting individually, we're going to be caucusing, and all the discussion is going to be centered around that budget.
You deflected all of Pat's questions on the unions. Are you afraid that that will distract from your discussion on the budget if that kind of union fight came here? Is that what you're saying?
What I'd like to see, again, is to have the public employees engaged with us on the budget discussion. So, to the extent that something is helpful or not helpful, I'm mindful of that. We have got a budget to to solve and a budget to balance for all Minnesotans. And so
So essentially, you're saying you don't think you could sit down in a constructive way with the public employees unions if the types of proposals that Pat has just asked you about repeatedly came?
yeah, I haven't had any discussions with the public employees on those proposals. So, if they'd like to come and have a conversation with me on those, that'd be fine. But the bills are not at this point moving in committee. No one has come to my door to have those discussions, but always willing, always open for discussion on all
You have
issues.
the power as the leader to see that those bills come to committee and make sure they move through the process or not. So it is, although you keep saying it's the committee process, you got some power there and you decide.
Yeah, and right now, that power is all focused on getting this budget balanced. All of the power, any power that I have, balance the budget. Balance the budget.
Have you talked to MAPE about their suggestions for cost cutting?
We heard it actually in committee last year, or was it last year or 2 years ago, Bill? So I've actually served on Jobs and Economic Development, Metzen, and I think we also heard it in Thomasoni's committee last year, Economic Development. So I've heard the bill, and I've also had some discussion with Senator Perry on that bill, and he is looking at it.
Did you vote for it last year?
I can't remember what my vote is. I don't even know if we necessarily took a vote on it, Pat. I'd have to look. I'm sorry about that.
Your House counterpart says there's a few members of their caucus that want to spend significantly lower than $32 billion in the budget. Is that true in the Senate caucus as well?
I mean, I think there's the wide spectrum. What we're working on right now is rolling out for the caucus exactly, what the budget would look like given this and this. We're, providing a lot of scenarios. We're going to be sitting down, myself and our chief of staff is going to be sitting down individually with each senator and, getting a feel and discussing the different budget options with them. So those discussions are ongoing.
And I think that point perhaps reflects some frustration within Republican caucuses that Minnesota families and Minnesota businesses have already adjusted, streamlined, realigned, cut, and so especially our new members, right? Our new members who come here and say it's time to get government to do what everyone else in Minnesota has already done. So I think you will see bits of that reflected.
So in 8 years
Hasn't government done that in the last 8 years under technology? Streamlined, cut? I mean,
I'm not sure you could look at 38 years of Minnesota State Senate controlled by one party and say that we've done a lot of
But you've had a
streamlining.
Republican governor for 8 years. Has he not done what you just said should be done?
I think he's tried.
But he's failed?
I think that, again, 38 years of DFL Senate
So the
has
Senate
been
is more powerful than the governor?
I think that there's there are
Hopefully
equal
this year.
branches. Yeah, this year.
I'm trying.
It's always been a negotiation.
Thank you, guys.
so just to follow up, and so are freshmen going to be disappointed this year then? 'Cause it's gonna
Our
be
freshmen are our
negotiation.
strength, Tom. Our freshmen are.
But are they going to, at the end of the day, if it's divided government, like it's been the last 8 years or 38 years or whatever, are they going to end up disappointed at the end of the day because this is going to be a negotiation?
No, I think they understand that it's a negotiation. I don't think there's going to be disappointment. And we're going to continue to have, this is 87 days of continuous conversation with all members, not just freshmen.
What day is the vote for the tax proposal?
We're not entirely sure yet, Tim. We're looking to next week, but we'll let you know on the day.
It's hard when you don't have a bill, right?
So we're trying
have
to reconstruct.
We either have to get it or make it.
Who's going to sponsor it?
That is a great question for your next group.
Yes.